Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Gruesome and Grotesque video. As always, I just do these videos randomly, sporadically, whenever an article that I read either on Google News or maybe something else that I see on social media merits posting it here within this playlist. It seems like there's a lot more of these stories coming about on my Google News app, such as the case here with this very tragic tale, very gruesome tale involving three brothers who ended up dying after passing out in a manure pit. That's right, those of you that are in the farmlands, maybe those of you that manage farms, you might know more information with regards to the dangers associated with these manure pits. But essentially, these three poor brothers ended up passing out in one and then ended up dying afterwards from the after effects. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine your last moments on earth essentially being those moments? But it has to do with this. You're looking at a picture of the three brothers now. Let's go ahead and let's talk about that information here about the three brothers there on an Ohio farm who died in a manure pit. So here's essentially what happened. It was very recent too. It just happened the other week or so with regards to the situation. At a location there in Ohio, a farm, I don't know exactly where it was. None of the information seems to point to it specifically. But at this farm, there was this large area there involving livestock, involving feeding cattle, involving cows and so on. And part of that situation there involved a manure storage pit. Again, those of you that work on a farm or manage farms, you might have more local information on this. But these very large pits are used to essentially house and then store anything involving large amounts of animal waste. And then those are in turn used for fertilizer and then other purposes as well. And then these can be pretty large. I can just imagine the large volume of manure that goes through these things. I mean, cows and pigs especially, I mean, they have so much waste that they do on a daily basis, let alone annually, but all of it definitely helps out when it comes to the farm and when it comes to the sales. All that stuff is used throughout so many other features. But the problem though is this: they are known to produce very toxic fumes. Apparently these places should be treated as death traps. In fact, one of the warnings that was associated with one of the personnel there from the NASD, the National Agricultural Safety Database, stated, always treat a pit as if it is a death trap and take necessary precautions to protect yourselves and others if entry is necessary. That's how harmful these things can be. Even though they look pretty mundane, even though obviously it's like a comical situation involving large amounts of waste and manure and so on from these animals, still there's very voluminous amounts of methane, ammonia, carbon dioxide, and hydrogen sulfide that happen to culminate within those pits. Can you imagine how strong that stuff is, especially when you're inside the pit as well? I can imagine that there's never going to be any loss or decrease from it, like where it's absolute zero. There's always going to be something in terms of those components there because of, again, the continued waste that happens to go through these manure pits. Somebody might have to point out, though, like how that gets processed, how it gets emptied, and so on, because eventually, at a certain point, this pit, the one that the brothers had there on the farm, ended up having issues. Apparently, something was happening with a pump within it, and so the three brothers, by the way, their names were Gary, Todd, and Brad Whoopker. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Gary, Todd, and Brad Whoopker were actually inside the manure storage pit, and they were fixing a pump inside of it. At this point, one can hope that, of course, everything was emptied out. Obviously, because of the nature of manure and because of the nature of the fertilizer, it'll probably be still sticking everywhere. But one can hope that, again, everything was emptied out while they were in there fixing the pump. The problem, though, was those aforementioned dangerous items, the methane, ammonia, carbon dioxide, hydrogen sulfide, that's still there. It builds up. In fact, one of the other messages stated that there's various stages of manure decomposition and then also wind conditions that can make things very dangerous if you're inside one of those pits. In other words, all of a sudden everything is fine, but then next minute, let's say the wind changes and there's a sudden draft that suddenly comes into the pit, a very strong draft. Well, if it hits you and you happen to have, let's say, no other protection around you, that methane, ammonia, carbon dioxide, and hydrogen sulfide can cause people to actually pass out. They could even have asphyxiation, they could have extreme headaches, they could have other type of choking circumstances, and so on. All that stuff can happen in that very short time period. We're talking just moments because of the unpredictability associated with the conditions there within the pit. So, and I was reading some information too from the NASD, and it stated that during the summertime, that is the worst time for farm workers and work-related injuries and deaths, because most of it are attributed actually to these very same pits. Most of the time it looks like there's repairs that are needed on these pits, and so when that happens, that's when these farm workers, they go there, try to get the situation done, but again, there's so much danger associated with these type of locations, with these pits, that it just causes work-related injuries, and on the extreme end, actual deaths, as we're talking about here with regards to these three brothers. Either way, though, they were there inside the pit. Brad was 35, Gary was 37, and Todd was 31. They were in there fixing the pit somewhere along the way, and I imagine there's going to be more info later on from investigators, from someone that tries to piece together what occurred. But considering what they were already stating, it looks like they went in something unprotected, like in other words, no hazmat suits or maybe nothing else in terms of something covering their nose, creating oxygen, stuff like that. And then they went in and somewhere along the way, something caused them to start to feel ill, very quickly. One of them, though, actually had the wherewithal to call at around 12:30 p.m. just this Tuesday that they were now stuck within that manure pit. The way I read that information, it seemed like they had a way to get in and obviously a way to get out, but because of what was happening to them, the conditions may be causing them to feel dizziness, headaches, asphyxiation. In fact, that was their official cause of death, was asphyxiation. Because of it, now they were not able to get back out. Either they weren't in a condition to do so, or they might have knocked out the ladder or something else that they had that would have allowed them to be able to escape, to get out as they had come back in. And so they called at around 12:30 p.m. They were stating that they were stuck inside. Authorities, firefighters actually were the ones that were there first, but by then it was too late. They were actually unconscious within the manure pit itself. In fact, firefighters had to use ropes and ladders to be able to get them. Not only that, but there was a dive team and there was an air ambulance that also came out, all of them trying to make sure that they could help get these brothers out of this very dangerous pit. And no doubt everyone else that was involved was heavily protected as well because of the dangers associated with it. But no, it was too little too late. The brothers ended up dying at the hospital called Fort Wayne Lutheran Hospital, and then that was it. The whatever had occurred to them within that pit, it caused them to not be able to get out anymore. They were able to at least make that call. One of them did, but it was too late with them being able to get help. So when I was reading this information, again, it's just such a tragic tale. Just imagine something like this. Obviously, these pits, again, can be very valuable, very resourceful. Everything as far as them being used for fertilizer and for sales and so on, and the growing of the farm itself. But you can just imagine that these poor brothers, their lives essentially ended within one of the very pits that they had there within that farm. None of them would have woken up that morning essentially thinking that that was going to happen to them, but it did. So again, if anyone has any more info on a local level, somebody in the farmland area, someone that knows more about these type of situations and the toxicity associated with them, then please post those comments below. What about anybody there from the Ohio area? Maybe you might know these brothers, and again, very tragic situation. If so, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. with regards to this area, and then again, maybe explain why they would have gone in there, presumably under no safety conditions when it comes to taking care of fixing that pumps. Again, it'd be interesting to hear if anybody has any more information associated with it, but horrible way to go out, horrible way to die, and again, all in the middle of that pit in of itself. So, all right, everybody, thanks again as always. Take care. Bye.